What's going on, everybody? Anthony here, back with another video. So today we're going to be doing a little test, or a little review if you will, on a leak down tester. So I ordered this one on Amazon. It's kind of the same style I've been using for a long time, but it's a really good tester. But this is kind of a Chinese version of the tester I normally use, so I wanted to give it a shot here. So what a leak down tester does is it applies pressure to the combustion chamber, or the cylinder, piston and cylinder side of things. So what this really tests is the top end when it's on its compression stroke, meaning both valves are closed and the piston is coming up and compressing the air, the compression stroke. And what you're trying to find out is if you have a symptom of low power, maybe dies when hot, or maybe it won't restart when hot, this could help diagnose that problem. So it's a very common issue with machines that have been neglected, or maybe ran without an air filter, so they got dirt ingested, scored the cylinder, or chewed through the intake valve, or a ton of carbon buildup and scratched the sidewalls of the cylinder. The list goes on. So another thing would be like low oil. You got metal transfer, metal gets into the oil, scratches the sidewalls because now the walls are being mixed with metal and oil. And so this will kind of diagnose that issue. So what you do here is, let me show you guys, let me get my compressed air. Okay, so all you need for this setup here is compressed air. You need the obviously the tool, and you're gonna have to remove the spark plug. So we'll go ahead and do that now. And so what you're doing here is, again, you're applying compressed air into the cylinder here. And what this does is that whenever you bring this machine to top dead center, it is going to what's going to happen is both of those valves are going to be closed, and the cylinder, it's fouled, and the cylinder is going to be, or the piston is going to be all the way up. So you'll be able to tell if it's leaking past the piston, or leaking through one of the valves, or even through the head gasket. It's going to diagnose that for you, because again, so again, you're applying compressed air into here, and that is what's going to determine a leak. So if you put compressed air into an enclosure, the air can't escape. But in this case, we have points of failure, which is the valves, which is the head gasket, like I was saying, or by the piston. So what you do is you listen. So you listen through the intake. So you can take this off here. Let me take that off. So what I do is I open up this here, and then I open up the dipstick tube as well. And what you're going to do is then you're going to connect your tool here. So whichever fitting you're going to use, they're almost all the same. So unless you're doing a handheld piece of equipment, then they're pretty much all the same. Okay, so now you're going to connect your tool, and what I like to do is sit the mower up so I can rotate the blade. So always do this with caution, because again, you're applying pressure to that cylinder, which is going to force that piston down. So when you rotate the engine on that compression stroke, you're going to get some feedback, because the air is going to be forcing the piston down. And it's not, you can get higher end ones, which they're applying like 120 PSI or whatever your shop does. But this one I like because it only supplies about 30 PSI, which is about half of what you need, but it's honestly going to give you enough feedback to tell of where it's leaking. So when I rotate this blade with the tool connected, the air is going to, it shouldn't leak through anywhere. So you'll get your reading here. So usually 20% or lower is bad. That is a rule I go by. You want it to be in the yellow, but 20%. If it's like between 30 and 20, it'll run, you know, but it may have a little bit low power. But when you're looking at 40 or even in the yellow in here or the red, you're chalked. So now we're going to connect the tool and then listen. So when we rotate that blade, we're going to listen through the intake. And if the intake has air coming through, that means the intake valve is leaking. If the exhaust has air coming through it, that means the exhaust valve is leaking. If you hear it through the dipstick, or sometimes you'll hear it through the intake at the same time because the crankcase breather in there, then that means you have worn out piston rings or a worn out piston and cylinder. So, and that is how you tell if your machine is not worth repairing. So at that point, if your test reads low, then you're going to then diagnose this as not repairable, or if you need to put a short block in it, if it's a commercial grade machine, or if you want to put a long block or whatever you want to do, you know. But in most cases, if it's a residential, it's basically totaled. So we'll now connect this hose. Okay, so I got you set up here. Now I am going to rotate this thing, ignore that air filter. So we're going to then connect this thing, and we're going to be able to see where the pressure, what the pressure gauge does there. So let me get some more slack out of this compressor line. Okay, so let me see if I can set this up here, and then we are going to rock and roll, because I want y'all to be able to see this gauge here. So we're going to connect this up. Okay, and then we're going to rotate that blade around. Okay, right here, you're going to see that you'll get the blade to a point of where, you know, it can just hold pressure by itself, and it's kind of hard to get to. It's going to take some practice, but always take precautions, because that blade, it's kind of hard to rotate, so you got to be kind of strong with it. And as you can see, we're 20 plus, which we are good, and you can hear it leaking through the intake valve, which is pretty common for machines that have, you know, maybe ran with no air filter or whatever the case may be. So that right there is a proper test of doing a leak down. So again, it's applying 30 psi, which these engines normally operate at about 60. Then handhelds, you're getting into 90, 100, you know, 90 psi, 120 psi. You know, 90 is perfect for testing those. But the lower ones, it's perfectly fine, because it's honestly, it's compressed air, and it's gonna let you know if you have an issue. So once again, it's a great test on learning the engine, if it's worth repairing, or if it has an issue that cannot be repaired, or maybe the repair is going to be a pretty significant amount. So maybe the intake valve is leaking. Maybe you can just lap the valves because it's got some carbon buildup or something. Reface the valves. You can do stuff like that. Or maybe your head gasket is blown. So when you connect this line, you'll go to the head and you'll literally feel air coming through the head gasket. You can listen. Same thing with the exhaust valve. Maybe the piston is it's leaking the crankcase past the piston rings. Maybe you need a new compression ring. Either way, this is a test that I don't see a whole lot of people doing, and I highly recommend this test on every machine, because it can steer you wrong if you don't do this test, because you may get a low power issue and you're thinking it's the carburetor, you do the carb, then you're like, maybe it's misfiring or something, you do the coil or the flywheel key, and it can mislead you. So again, this is a great test. I highly recommend these testers, but this one in particular is a little bit too cheap, maybe for a couple times use, I don't know. We'll see how long it lasts, but it was like 30 or 40 bucks on Amazon. So either way, we might keep it. I might get a higher end one, because again, I am using this as a business. So that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you guys for watching. We'll catch you guys next time.